It's been a while since I've been able to make videos the way that I like to, and I've only just now been able to do it. And I want to get back into the kind of video I like doing, going strong. I like giving advice to people. I like being helpful. Uh, and I want to kind of put it in perspective for a lot of people on just how poor discourse is online, and discourse in general is pretty poor, but mainly online because there's that level of disconnect and dehumanization that goes on because all you can see is just text on the screen or hear somebody's voice. Very rarely are you having a genuine interaction with somebody in real time. There's just a layer of humanity that's not there online, and I think that's where most of the issues come up from. But I want to talk about stupid people, dealing with stupid people, arguing with stupid people, and debating stupid people. And knowing is half the battle with any kind of argument, fight, a war. Knowing is half the battle. And you kind of have to get a feel for the kind of person that you're going to be dealing with. There's kind of three main categories of idiots, stupid people online that you're going to be dealing with. One of which isn't even a person. But first and foremost is the useful idiot. Somebody who is an adult, who does think for the most part like an adult, and is able to be spoken to in adult manners, and with the proper technique can be, properly, have a discussion with, but they're so ingrained in whatever mindset that they may be that they become a useful idiot, right? So they're not inherently bad people. They're not inherently evil. They just don't know any better. And with proper guidance and time and the proper speaking technique, you could probably convince them of why their ideology or their cause or whatever the fuck they're spewing on about, whatever they're being useful idiots for. You can prove that that's a bad thing, right? So, a kind of example of a person like this is a socialist, a cultural Marxist, somebody who is pushing for these socialist ideals, right? And you can give them examples of why socialism as an economic policy does not work and why it almost always leads to a state dictatorship, right? You can give these people evidence, and if you're doing it right, you can convince them, right? But if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be, a circular argument. It's going to go nowhere, right? So that a lot of live debates kind of end poorly for a lot of what I would call right-leaning people is because they don't have the proper speaking techniques. They don't have a speaking voice. They don't have convincing arguments. They're not a public speaker, right? They can't properly spread their ideals because the other side is more proficient at doing it, right? Even if they are objectively right. With useful idiots, you can convince them. It just takes time and proper technique. It's just as simple as that. The second type of stupid person you're going to be interacting with online is bots. A lot of what you'll find online, people arguing with you over the dumbest of things, like indescribable, like how can you possibly believe that? How can you not see the evidence? Are you actually stupid? Right? Like, blatantly, like, this doesn't make any sense on how you're even remotely believing what you're currently believing and the ideas you're pushing, right? A lot of people like that are bots. I shouldn't have to say that. It should be a shock to say that, but a lot of people will just not believe it. They'll think that you're full of shit. But a lot of discourse online is bots. I think a lot of people have proven on Twitter in particular that there's a lot of bots. There's a lot of bots on 4chan. French chan is down now, but I remember when I was going on there's a lot of bots there. And what bots will do a lot of the time is they won't engage your arguments. They won't acknowledge your arguments. They'll kind of resort to ridicule. They'll resort to name-calling, very childish things, but they'll never concede on any point. They'll never acknowledge any point. They only push whatever ideal that they're programmed to push, right? And that's why, and it's more of a gut instinct thing. I know that sounds like bullshit. I know that sounds like it means nothing, but it's more of a gut instinct thing uh, regarding talking to bots than anything. There's just there's already a layer of disconnect and dehumanization that goes on with talking to people online and internet discourse. But you add in the fact that the way that bots argue and talk is very inorganic. It feels very inorganic. It doesn't make sense. There's just this layer of inhumanness that is about the way that bots go about doing whatever they're programmed to do that you can learn with time, right? I think just about anybody that has any kind of internet discourse can learn with time that how bots are and how bots behave. It's incredibly frustrating to deal with them, but like I said, they won't engage your arguments at all. They won't acknowledge them at all. They'll just usually resort to ridicule or pushing whatever ideals they have. An example I have of this is on French Chan in particular. I remember I made a thread on the random board. I was specifically asking, how does Nazi ideology work? What is the fundamentals of Nazism? What's the fundamental of fascism? What kind of government is it? How does it work? What's the process here? What's the governmental structure, right? Is there a constitution? Is there a Bill of Rights? What is there? How does this government work? I didn't get the answer. Now I already know. I already know how fascism works, right? I went into it knowing this. But I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. I wanted to hear from self-proclaimed neo-Nazis and white supremacists what they believe fascism is. I didn't get an answer. I got a non-answer, and I think that was from somebody who is literally just somebody who fell into the honeypot and is LARPing. But he essentially said something along the lines, "Well, not National Socialism is like a cultural thing. It's like a region-based thing. So Texas's version of National Socialism would be different from Florida's National Socialism." It was fucking like a non-answer, right? It didn't answer my question. How does it work? And nobody answered because nobody knew. Because most likely they were all bots. Every comment or reply that I got to that thread was inorganic non-arguments, right? And I wasn't even arguing against fascism as an ideology. I simply asked. I stated I don't believe in fascism as an ideology. I believe it infringes on people's rights too much. But what is the fundamentals of it? How does it work? And I didn't get a fucking answer. I got ridiculed. I got called a race traitor. I got called an inbred hick. I got called a Jew, which, in such circles is kind of common anyways. A lot of bots will kind of resort to calling you a Jew. That way it becomes a contest of who's Jewing who, right? And it always devolves into an argument about Jews, always. But that I think that's a pretty good example of how bots operate. They don't engage your argument. I don't know that I didn't explain it well, but there's no other way to explain it. I didn't get an answer because they didn't engage my question. They didn't engage my argument. They didn't even acknowledge what I'd said, right? There was no humanity there. There was no organic discussion going on, right? There was nothing organic about that discourse that happened there, right? I think the only real other third stupid person online is kids, right? There's a lot of children online, and kids don't know any better, right? And unless they come out and say, "Yeah, I'm a kid," it's all assumption. But you can typically tell when a kid is arguing with you. It usually boils down to they learned it in school, but they didn't pay attention in school. Not that school taught them right anyways. But they're pushing what they've already learned, but they don't know how to do that properly. And that kind of coincides with bots a little bit, but there's still this layer of organic discussion that happens when arguing with a kid online. A child still responds in an organic way. They still at least acknowledge what you are saying, even if they don't agree with it, and even if they don't know how to properly do so, they still go about the discussion in an organic way. A bot won't. And, there's not really anything else I could elaborate on that. It's just as simple as, kids don't know any better. But the best thing you can do with arguing with stupid people online is to just not do it at all. That's my best advice to it. And it's not necessarily like, oh, don't feed the trolls. No, it's not that. I mean, you shouldn't. You shouldn't feed the trolls, right? That's like a fucking ancient term in the grand scheme of the internet now, but it's not necessarily that. It's just as simple as, if you know the discussion isn't going to go anywhere, then don't have it. It's because it saves you time, it saves that person time, and it's just simply not worth it. If you know it's going to go in one ear and out the other, don't even do it. And I have an example of this. I'm not going to say the commenter's name. I'm not going to do that. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't want anybody harassing them, even if you do know who it was. But on my video, a response to Dubus Goobus, Too Long Didn't Read, on that video is essentially, it's a, like, how long was it? It's a 9-minute, 51-second video, so about a 10-minute video. And essentially, Dubus Goobus made a video saying that, he doesn't like the Confederacy, the South bad, and he gave, like, some of the worst reasons why he thought that. And I made a video responding to that, proving why his reasons were stupid, right? And, I got the typical responses you would expect, but it's just this one guy, for like I think a week, maybe 2 weeks straight, just wanted to argue with me. It was one comment, it's like a 4-paragraph comment, it was another guy's comment. Blah blah blah. I understand you don't agree with general portrayal of your beliefs. I mean, this is not the hill you want to die on, right? And I responded something along the lines of, "So you're telling me to lay down and take it, to just let people make shit up, or tell half-truths, as that's what primarily the slavery narrative is built on, half-truths. If I look like a fool, I look like a fool, but the theater is burning and you're none the wiser. History is a powerful thing, and teaching outright fabrications dictates what people believe. There is nothing impartial about modern academia. It is all government-approved narratives." And this one guy came in. I was just like, I commented, "Sounds like indoctrinated populace to me. Current Western education systems heavily encourage blind obedience, which in turn creates a population that cannot think for themselves. If we were to be defending Hitler on things that were outright fabrications, it logically should not be controversial to do so. You don't have to personally agree with somebody or the things they support to uphold truth. I think we just see things differently. Yes, defending the Confederacy will always be an uphill battle, and fruitless if I'm honest, but that's not why I do it. Allowing fibs to be spread is to set a precedent that they can do it to anyone. I know it's a slippery slope argument, but if they can lie about one historical figure, they can do it to anyone. I know this from experience with the media." And this one guy came out of nowhere. As opposed to the indoctrination of the lost cause myth, the Confederacy is not worth defending because their values were tied up too heavily in the right to own slaves, even with other issues at play, to the point that the North had an entire division made up of draft dodgers from the South who volunteered to fight the North. They knew what everyone was fighting for. You need to pick your battles better if you wish to debunk myths, as well as learn better how to put the corrections in proper context without sounding like you're unironically defending the wholesale. And like he just goes on to like make non-arguments, right? And maybe I think this guy was like unironically a kid. I don't think he knew any better. He was just like saying what he learned at school. I replied with, "So your evidence is the North had the deserters fight for them? No quoting of political figures or legal documents, just the same kind of indoctrination that you accuse me of? Quite frankly, I remain unconvinced, and will remain so, as people who spout the myth of the righteous cause are equally as insufferable as a quote-unquote lost causer. Both have no deeper understanding to the topic aside from the scant few catchphrases, and to hate the other side." He replied with, "No deserters, people who avoided the draft in the first place. They certainly weren't cowards, or they wouldn't have volunteered for the other side." I didn't call them cowards, by the way. Can you give another possible explanation for why they did that? It's far from my only piece of evidence. It's just all I mentioned in this particular comment thread. If you're going to accuse me of indoctrination, let me show you the door on that fallacy. I didn't get my education on the subject from the public school system any more than you did. I bothered to do more than the cursory examination of the subject those schools offered, and it still leads me to conclude the Confederacy was absolutely a worse moral option than the Union. You can be proud of your people without being proud of every piece of their history. And I told him to then enlighten me. Right? That's all I replied with. Then enlighten me. And he said, He replied with, "I've said everything important already. Which part confuses you?" And I replied with, "You've given me no facts. You've given me no evidence. You've given me talking points of which I've heard many times. If your goal is to educate, or at the very least defend the honor of your people, then you have to provide feasible and readily observable evidence. Your argument is boiled down to the South bad because school/TV/government man said so, and you should believe it too. If you cannot see the issue I'm having with believing your claims, that there is nothing I can possibly do to help your understand the subject further." I typed that out like shit. And he replied with, "You gave no facts or evidence either. Kind of funny how everything you say here applies to you. I simply asked which part you needed enlightened on, and you can't even answer a simple question." At this point, he starts typing a little emoticons too. "And the fact you say, 'cause the government said so,' when I explicitly stated official education on the Civil War is shit and I went elsewhere for it, instead of relying on sources that say nothing, betrays that you weren't paying the slightest bit of attention to anything I actually said." I don't know why I said 26 minute, but I said I made a 26 video specifying exactly why I believe what I do with the evidence to support it. You just said catchphrases I've heard many times from many people. I'm not going to go in a circular argument with you over this. If you have some genuine hard evidence of any claim you made, or may have wanted to, then please provide it. Not some interpretation of what someone said, but cold, hard, unequivocal evidence that leaves no interpretations. You made claims, and the burden of proof is on you." And he replied with, "Why you believe yes, with very little in the way of anything beyond circumstance to back it up, not facts. I didn't give just catchphrases. This is just the comment you cherry-picked to respond to. Is there anything else you care to make up? I already provided more extensive arguments elsewhere in your comments. They shouldn't be hard to find, and how few you got, that is, if you are interested in discourse as you claim. Side note, that isn't even the video's length," and it wasn't. Granted, it wasn't. He replied with, "Seeing you have made a string of comments referring to me deleting your comments despite me having no notifications of the comments at all, I can't help but feel this is some strange mind game you're playing with the people in the comments. Even if YouTube automatically deleted some of your comments, I'd still be notified of them in some form or manner, but to actually see them is a different story. I've only been notified of your comments wherein you give no genuine facts or quotes to support the claims you've made, of which many I've responded to. I mean no ill will and wish you the best, but I have no interest in entertaining you further." And his last reply was, "Also, first I've heard of 3 very separate comments being called a string of comments, haha." So I skimmed through a lot of these comments, but he left a few other comments, under other posts and all that, and, it'd be one thing if I literally just didn't see his comments, but they're not there. He did make other comments. Now, if you don't know, YouTube will let you, notify you when there is a comment, right, in some form or manner. They'll let you know in some way, whether that be through your email or your YouTube studio. They will show that there was a comment at one point. You might not be able to read the comment in full. You might not even see the comment at all, but it will let you know that the comment did exist at one point. And of course, going off the numbers, that I see on the comment threads that he's on. It's stayed the same, and then I go and check YouTube Studio and my email. The comment number is still the same, right? So he just made it up. And this went on for like a week, maybe two, where it's just going back and forth with this guy. And I'm like, please, just give me evidence. Support the claim that you made. And he didn't. There wasn't any. And like, again, I don't want anybody to go harass this guy. And I wish the guy the best, right? I think it's literally just a kid. I don't think they know any better. Maybe it was just somebody that was fucking with me, which, if that's the case, you got me, I guess. But, like, this is like the best example of, if you know it's going to go nowhere, then don't do it, right? Don't do it. So, it's a good example of it. I should have not argued with the guy any further than I did. Like, it should have been like, after the second time, he's like, well, I already gave my evidence. And then, that's it, right? So, my best advice is just don't engage with him. If you know it's not going to go anywhere, if it's not going to resort into anything productive, it's going to be a nothing burger of a conversation or debate, then don't even entertain it. It's not worth it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth their time, right? To anybody that's like this, hear the other side out. Learn to be more intellectually honest with yourself and others, and don't be like the guy.